千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Laozi. As always, I would like to extend a warm welcome to one and all. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. Once upon a time, in ancient China, a Tao sage was traveling through the wilderness and noticed a commotion up ahead. The Tao sage got closer and saw two men engaged in a heated argument. They seemed really worked up over something, so the sage decided to find out what it was all about. It turned out the two men were hunters. They were arguing over the numbers. One of them stated that, well, you see, if you hunt 8 animals every day for 3 days, you end up with 24 animals. The other hunter disagreed. The other hunter said, no, it's 23 animals, not 24. Each of them was convinced the other was wrong. Neither one was willing to back down. They agreed, finally, to arbitration. What they would do is that they would choose a wise person to render a decision on their dispute. And the winner would take the loser's hunter game for the day. And it was at that moment that the sage approached. So the two hunters asked the sage to be their arbiter. They explained their conflicting views, and the sage listened patiently. When both sides were done explaining, the sage rendered his verdict. He pointed to the hunter who said 23. The one who said, if you got 8 animals for 3 days consecutively, you end up with 23 animals. He pointed to this hunter and said, you win. You may take what your friend has hunted today. The winner grinned happily. He took his prize and went on his way, looking satisfied and smug. The hunter who lost, the one who said 24, could hardly believe his ears. Now, he could not go against the decision from the sage because he had already sworn to be bound by arbitration. But this was an outrage. He turned to the sage. In frustration, he said, adding up 8 3 times gets you 24. This is so simple that even little kids understand it. You seem to be a wise man. How can you not know such a simple thing? The sage smiled back at him. The sage said, of course you are correct. Of course the true answer is 24. Of course it is simple. Now think about what you're doing. If someone cannot even comprehend such a simple thing, then what is the point to argue with him? The hunter was stunned. He was so caught up in the argument that he never stopped to think about what he was doing. The sage continued, that hunter thinks he has won. He's got the prize today, but he also has foolish delusions, not just today, but very likely for his entire life. You think you have lost, but in reality, you have gained a valuable lesson you will never forget. The hunter realized the truth. In the words of the sage, to argue with a fool means being even more foolish than the fool. Did he really want to identify with that? Why waste precious time when life was so finite? The end. So in this traditional Tao story, there's a number of things that we can get out of it. Let's talk about the Tao. Let's lay it out. First, I think we all know that we will also come across those with views that are obviously wrong from our perspective. You can probably think of a few right now. So this is a practical lesson from the Tao because it'll prepare us for a real life situation. Now, the question from the sage would apply to us. What exactly would be the point to argue and debate against those people who are obviously wrong? The question is, what would that accomplish exactly? How would that benefit you in a practical way? I know one way where it can be disadvantageous to you, that the time you spend with that person trying to argue, trying to change their mind, you're never going to get that time back. So as the sage pointed out, doing so, arguing or debating against fools, would make one more foolish than the fool. Life is already too short as it is. Our time in this world is finite. Why waste any of it? We can and should redirect our attention to more worthwhile pursuits. If you make the decision to do that, then that decision will be wise. It will be congruent in keeping with the message from Tao Te Ching chapter 81, the current chapter that we are studying. So this is the story of the two hunters that has correspondence with chapter 81. If you would like to hear more from the story, I would direct your attention to chapter 7 from the book, The Tao of Tranquility, available as paperback, ebook, and audiobook. The most important thing, though, for us at this moment in time is to tie it back to chapter 81. It says, those who are good do not debate. Those who debate are not good. So there's more than one way to see the truth of that, whether with the straightforward statements from Laozi or from a story, as you have just heard. This is not something that only Laozi talks about. It was something that all the sages talked about and were familiar with, which is why I say that it is an authentic teaching from a genuine tradition of the Tao. I would direct your attention to the other great sage, Zhuangzi. Now, there's a whole bunch of text here, which I will translate for you, but Zhuangzi had written about this topic as well. And I want to share with you exactly what he wrote. So first, this is from Zhuangzi. Zhuangzi, the term is the name for the sage, but also the name for the work that he had written. The book, the classic of Zhuangzi, is composed of 33 chapters, where chapters 1 to 7 are known as the inner chapters, 8 to 33, the outer chapters. The authorship of the inner chapters is certain to be Zhuangzi himself, but from 8 to 33, some of it might be authored by other people. In ancient times, it was customary, it was common to be inspired by a great sage and then add to what that sage has created as a way to contribute to an overall narrative. So for this particular one, it's from the writing known as the Autumn Floods, sometimes translated as the Floods of Autumn. Two characters, Qiu Sui. Qiu means autumn, Sui means water. In this case, flooding waters. So you see the three lines that Zhuangzi wrote for that particular section of autumn floods. Let me translate them for you one by one. First, with the frog in the well, one cannot talk about the ocean. It is constrained by the hole it is in. So what it means is that the frog in the well has never seen the ocean, much less been to it. It cannot fathom anything that is so much bigger than the well that it knows. So the frog is constrained physically by the well. It's useless for you to talk about the ocean with the frog. It has no concept of the ocean, period. Second line is translated as follows. With an insect of summer, one cannot talk about ice. It knows nothing beyond its season. Its season is summer, the warm days, the warm temperatures of summer. Just as the frog is constrained physically by the well, the insect is constrained chronologically by its brief lifespan. It cannot live long enough to experience the colder temperatures of winter, so it cannot know what ice is. It's equally useless for you to talk about ice with this insect. It has no conception of ice. Last paragraph there. With a scholar of limited views, one cannot talk about the Tao. He is bound by what he taught, what he was taught. So here, Zhuangzi is comparing the dogmatic scholar to the frog and the insect. Limited understanding of the scholar is like physical and chronological constraints. Although it is possible for human beings to change and break out of those constraints, it is the exception rather than the rule. And until there's some kind of breakthrough, it doesn't serve any purpose for someone who knows about the Tao to talk to someone who's closed-minded to the Tao. The Tao itself is represented here by the ocean. The vastness of the ocean symbolizes the limitless expanse of the Tao. Now, let me turn that back around and point out that if you are in this meeting or listening to this recording, chances are very good that you are one of the exceptional individuals. Most people cannot change, some can. And I hope that all of us in this meeting are capable of change. At the very least, we are the ones who know about ice. We have seen the ocean. Now we want to make our way there, metaphorically. So being capable of change, it means we have the ability to tap into this inner potential for transformation. That inner potential is called Buddha nature in Buddhism. At the same time, we know that these lines that we're seeing on the screen, these describe most people very well, because most people by and large are still limited and not ready to change. Many are not even aware of their constraints. When that is the case, it is not a useful or productive expenditure of your time to try to force them to change. That is the point that Zhuangzi is trying to make. So as you can see, there's actually extensive writings about this whole idea of debating or even just talking about discussing something. So let's take a look at the reasons why people are for debates and the reasons why Lao Tzu will be against it. We've got the pro-debate perspective and the Tao perspective side by side for contrast. Someone who thinks debates are a good thing may say, we end up with a better understanding of the other side as a result of having a debate. The Tao perspective says, let's be real, we end up more bitterly divided than before. I think this should not be a surprise because we're living this right now. We're seeing it on a daily basis. Yes, many people do think debate is a good thing, and yet, despite people thinking that, we are still deeply divided today as a society. So the debates haven't really helped at all. We learn from the debates and increase knowledge. The Tao perspective says we learn from the debate, yes, but not increasing our knowledge of the subject that was debated. What people learn from a debate is that they practice their debating skills. They sharpen their debating skills. Next time, they're going to know better how to mislead, distort, contort a point until it fits with the narrative that they want to express in order to persuade or convince. That's rather cynical, but it is reality. Someone who likes debates may say, look, we can settle our differences through debates. From the Tao perspective, debates are exchange of words. Words ultimately won't do anything by themselves. We can better settle our differences through proactive, mindful actions, not debates. The pro-debate perspective continues, well, listen, each side will learn where it should modify its views as a result of having had that debate. Now you can guess where Lao Tzu would come down on that assertion. Lao Tzu would say, no, each side becomes more entrenched in its views. Looking around, I think you will see that this is more true than not. After a debate, nobody's mind really got changed. Everybody becomes ever more entrenched. Oftentimes, the pro-debate perspective will say, let the best ideas win. Whereas the Tao perspective points out, really, the best ideas will win? Then how is it that both sides claim victory? So which were the best ideas? Did they really win? Now we see this, we have seen this quite a few times. Every time we have a presidential debate, no matter how the candidates did, right after the debate, both sides claim victory. It takes quite some time before history renders a definitive verdict as to who won and who lost. Usually, when the votes are cast and tallied. And after that, when historians review what actually happened. So, not necessarily true that the best ideas will win. It's unfortunate, but that's reality. Lastly, pro-debate perspective may say, participants become more refined and articulate. They become better speakers. They can articulate their views. They can express themselves better, etc. Lao Tzu would say, yeah, they become more refined and articulate. They learn to use beautiful words. Beautiful words are refined and articulate words that are not true. So you can begin to see why sages will be against debates in general. Here's a little bit more on their perspective. A lot of times we will say that, well, debates, that is the basis of our democracy. Or the question may be asked, what is wrong with healthy, civil debates? One that advances all of us and educates everyone who maintains an open mind. Well, the cynical but sad truth is that this idealized fantasy vanishes upon contact with reality. It becomes more toxic than healthy, more angry than civil, and people quickly become defensive instead of open-minded. So as far as being the basis for our democracy, it's the voting franchise of informed citizens that is the true basis of our democracy. We can still be informed, and this chart is meant to illustrate that. The bar on the right approximates the emotional content of human interaction. We begin in that progression of interaction with statement of position. That is, people talk about the reasoning. They talk about the points in their position. They talk about supporting evidence. Why do I believe what I believe? Then, following that, there may be discussion. That is, there may be questions and answers to attain better clarification. When you said this, did you mean that? Clarification is good for everyone who participates in that discussion process. Then, that is positive and constructive. So everything that we have talked about so far contributes to the betterment of democracy. It contributes to harmonious coexistence of us and fellow human beings. All of this we can categorize as positive. Then we start moving into the debate stage. Beyond discussion, there's debates, and there may not be a clear distinction between what is a discussion, what is a debate. These stages in the progression blend into each other. So in a debate, there's point, counterpoint, there's rebuttal, and so on. Now, the debate can quickly degenerate into something worse. It can become arguments. That is, it becomes more like a shouting match. Even when it doesn't devolve into a shouting match, a debate can take on a deceptive quality that one side can be using false information or false logic to mislead the debate in order to win the debate. Then, beyond argument, it can go into altercation. It begins perhaps when someone is pushing or shoving another person. This results in physical conflict that can escalate. And then beyond this point, warfare. That is armed conflict. So at that point, it is of course negative and destructive. Throughout this entire process, it's gradual shading from one to the other, where debate is serving as a turning point of the two. Debates usually, they can and often do start with calm and rational minds. But as the debate progresses, you can feel the calmness and rationality slip away bit by bit. Perhaps someone will then make a remark that the other side feels is outrageous or illogical or both. So emotionally, the temperature goes up. then it starts to head downhill from there. As I said, it becomes ever more toxic, ever more angry, and defensive. So now I think you can get a better idea why Lao Tzu said what he said. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.